All right, sounds good. Thank you,
Yes.
Jim. Thank you,
Mhm.
everybody, for joining us today. So today we're going to give a little sneak peek of what's coming in our next version. This is due to be out released in December, so you'll be seeing these changes in our December release. That really pertains to some updates to how the audit log feature works in Verify. I'm going to jump into the feature a little bit. I'm going to jump into just change management in general in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about what needs to get done in order to take advantage of this feature. So you've got Verify Change Management. You went ahead, you upgraded to the December release, which will be a 25.10 release. When you first come over to your audit logs, you're going to see something like this, much different than the UI that we currently have, which essentially just lists out a whole bunch of audit logs that you could choose from. But in order to get this function turned on, the first thing you need to do is really enable it. So I'm going to walk us through that real quick. And to do that, we're going to navigate over to our setup menu on our CUCM clusters here on the right-hand side. And we're going to pick our Cisco Call Manager cluster. Now I've got a couple of them. One of them's activated already. One of them's not. So we're going to walk through the not activated one, cross our fingers, and hope for the best. But one of the things that you're going to notice here is we have a new option under our clusters for audit log processing. Previously, this was really bundled into the actual platform. So you would come down here and you would see an audit log directory. And in that case, essentially what we were doing is we were grabbing flat files and we were giving you reportability into the flat files. That works great, but we found that customers with larger organizations and you get people with hundreds of thousands of different audit logs, that could be a little bit cumbersome. It was harder to search. There weren't a ton of search options, and it could just be cumbersome looking through all the various flat files, especially if you have a lot of subscribers and things like that. So to simplify this, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how to turn this guy on. We're going to go ahead and navigate over to our audit log processing menu. And here, this is going to give you a list of all your Cisco Call Manager clusters. For this example, we're going to pick on our Colorado cluster here, and we've got our audit log path configured. This will automatically assume the path that you already have configured and verified. So if you already have audit logs set up, there's nothing you need to change here. This is going to go ahead and take the path that is already configured in your Verify system. Now, a couple things that we're going to want to keep an eye on are how you are keeping your audit log files. Are you keeping them forever? Are you keeping them for a month, 2 months, 3 months? This really comes down to how far back you want to be able to go on your Cisco audit logs. I'm just going to go ahead and set mine for 1 month from now. And that's going to preserve the audit log file. All right. So keep in mind, as we receive your audit logs, we get those from your call manager. And this is saying, hey, preserve that raw file. I really don't need that raw file for 3 months or 6 months. It's just a raw file with some data. It's nice to have in case I should need to go back to a raw file for some reason. The other thing you're going to notice down here is the purge audit log event data. This is saying, how long do you want to keep this data reportable? So remember, flat files are not necessarily reportable. They're just raw data sitting out in a folder, where your audit log event data is what is going to be housed in this database. And yes, we are creating a new database to store and house these audit log files. So in this case, I'm going to keep mine for 3 months, and then we're going to go ahead and enable processing. First thing it's going to ask you is, okay, where does your database? For those just using the OVA, it's going to be the local MySQL. For somebody that has a remote SQL server, you're going to see your database option drop down in here. Then we're going to give our database a name. And we're just going to go ahead and call it Colorado Audit here. And that's pretty much all we got to do so far. We're going to give this guy a save. This is going to go through. It's going to ask us if we want to create the database. Yes, we are going to create the database. And boom, we activate that. It is successfully activated. There's really nothing more you need to do. But let me talk a little bit about what's going on in the background. So once I activate this, Verify is going to go through the audit log directory. So if you've been storing audit logs for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, which would be excessive, but if you are storing them and you have an excessive amount of audit logs, what Verify is doing right now, it is going through all your existing audit logs and then bringing them into the database. So this could very well take a few moments. If you've got a ton of audit logs sitting out there, you have clusters, a lot of subscribers, a lot of changes going on within your call manager, you're going to have more audit logs and larger audit logs. What we're also doing here is eliminating duplicate entries. One thing that we see a lot with audit logs is you could actually get a lot of duplicates in there because the way that the audit logs overlap. In other words, every time a change gets made or an audit log gets run, it kind of creates a new log with a lot of the same criteria you had before. So what this is doing now is it's ingesting all the audit logs that I had out there historically. It's removing any of the duplicate information, and it is putting it into the database. Now, once it is into the database, we'll see if I actually had anything out there. I don't know that I did, but no, I didn't for that particular cluster, but for this one, I do. This is my Cisco Call Manager cluster. This one's a little bit more live. So essentially what we walk through is really how to enable this feature. Let it to ingest the audit logs that you had out there previously. The next thing we're going to talk about is using it. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move over to our change management and as-built reporting right here. And I'm going to kind of start from the beginning. I'm going to move out of my Colorado site because, as we know, that really doesn't have too much data, and over to my Mexico City, where we are taking our snapshots on a regular basis. Those that aren't familiar with the snapshots, this is an awesome tool to be able to, one, see how your call manager is configured historically. So just being able to click into a snapshot and identify all the configurations you had from a historical perspective. In other words, if I made a change and maybe it was not the best change in the world, I may want to see what I changed and go back. Cisco doesn't tell you how your call manager was configured on November 15th, but our system can. So audit logs are basically all the configurations within your call manager from a date perspective. The other thing with audit logs, and obviously some of the most powerful part of having your snapshots and the audit logs, is being able to understand what changes are being made in your call manager and who's making those changes. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to run a comparison. So I'm going to compare what our call manager looked like yesterday to what our call manager looked like today. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to look at all supported changes. That basically means show me any changes that took place in my call manager from yesterday to today. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to generate a comparison report. So this report right here, let me drag this guy over. There we go. Come on. Is basically identifying all the changes that took place in my call manager from yesterday to today. Now, this is extremely handy, especially if you've got lots of changes going on in your call manager on a regular basis. Maybe you have a lot of hands in the cookie jar, or maybe you're getting ready to do an upgrade of your call manager. You really want to run a snapshot prior to your upgrade and then do a comparison after your upgrade to your call manager, just to make sure all the I's are still dotted and the T's are still crossed. So what this report is identifying is all the MACDs that took place in my Cisco call manager from yesterday to today. We see some application user that was added. We have some enterprise parameters change, some service parameters, some SIP phone changes as well, and somebody added some application users. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about how we use this comparison report to identify who's actually making those changes. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to look at my application users, because in all honesty, from a call manager maintenance perspective, I kind of want to know what's being added and who's adding things in my application users. So I could see that yesterday Victor Vrba was added. Now that's important because we're going to want to know that information. In other words, who added Victor Vrba? Well, I don't need to copy that because PDF is not going to let me, but what we want to know is who added Victor Vrba. So this report obviously isn't going to detail that. It's really just detailing the changes that are taking place in the call manager. So we're going to use the new audit log feature to identify who added Victor Vrba. So a couple different ways that we're going to be able to do that. One, I can go ahead and do a keyword search, Victor at Variphy.com. I could also do a search set and look at the details. Now, I know Victor Vrba was added, so let's see what we can find here. And we're just going to do a search for Victor, and we're going to do a contains. And we'll see what we pull up here. Nothing for the current day, but let's go ahead and go back and let's look at the previous day. Oh, there we go. So we found some details that had Victor Vrba in them. Now, the reason that I'm doing a contains is because Victor is only part of this string in the details. So I'm essentially saying, show me anything that has Victor in it. And if we take a look here through here, we could see record and table device name map was mapped over to Victor Vrba. But here we can see our application user was added to the standard users group. Here we can add the application user was added to the standard audit users group. So very easily, rather than having to sift through a bunch of logs, I can easily show that the CCM admin from this particular IP address added Victor Vrba at this particular time of the day. So essentially what we've done is we've taken it down from having to navigate through a ton of different logs to being able to simply query the user interface to be able to pull this information. The other thing you'll notice is how fast that was. When you are looking through standard audit logs, again, remember I told you there's a lot of duplicate information in there, so it's a lot of information to scan. Once we remove that duplicate information, get that in the database, obviously your queries become a lot quicker. There's more than a few different ways to search. So one of the things you'll notice right when I came in here the first time is that this user logging is turned off. You can absolutely turn this back on. It just creates a lot of different logs. Most of them really not super important. So by default, we add that user logging is turned off in here. If I want to leave that on and just do a search for everything for yesterday, I just don't add any of my fields. So right now I'm looking at my previous day. I keep the rest of this blank. I click view data, and this is basically going to bring me back all of the changes that happened from yesterday. Now, you can see why we turn user logging off, because we get a whole lot of logs for every routine that's taking place in the call manager. Now, there may be times like that's important. But for the most part, in this case, we're going to leave that off because it really just bloats a lot of the information that we want to see. So if there's certain event types that we don't want to see, we can simply add them and tune those out. And now we're not going to get all of those user login types. A couple other things that I like to do from a filter perspective, and I'm going to expand this a little bit so we can see some more data, is let's go ahead and change our date range. Other thing that you're going to notice here is that we've really adopted the same reporting logic that we've had through our standard reporting. And that's just a standard UI to be able to search, query, pick dates, choose dates, and just do general searches. And we're going to continue to add to these features as we continue to advance our product. So now what we're seeing here is, again, I just searched for everything. So I'm not seeing all of the changes for the current month. Now, you see a lot of different changes in here. Maybe you want all these. Maybe some of them are not that important to you. So again, you have the ability to kind of filter out different things that you may want to see and different things that you may not want to see. Like maybe general configuration updates are important to me. Maybe I want to filter on those. Maybe I just want to see backup and restore updates. I may not care about CLI commands, but on the other side of things, you know what? I may be interested to see who's actually logging into the CLI on my call manager. So let's take a look. We're going to keep our user logging off, and we're going to go ahead and add CLI commands, but we're going to keep that as an is statement. So now we're saying don't show us the user logging commands or event types, but show us just the CLI commands. And there we go. Within just a couple of minutes, it pulled up all of the command types of CLI, and I can see who's logging in, running CLI commands, but also what the CLI command was in this particular case. So a lot of searching, a lot of different ways to be able to pull out that necessary information. So we're going to dig into a couple other things. Let's go ahead and pop back over to my report over here. And we're going to see we've got some SIP phone changes over here. So we can see that there was a phone description change. And it was changed from IPC Matt to IPC Matty Ice. If you're not familiar with our friend Matty Ice, you've been missing out on some great webinars. Matt's one of our pre-sales engineers and our engineer over here. So yesterday we were messing with his phone a little bit. So let's see if we can find that. We want to know, you know what, hey, who made this change? Perhaps it wasn't supposed to be getting done. So let's go ahead and jump into Variphy and see if we can figure out who made that change to Matty Ice. Now, if we look at our report here, we can see it's going to give us Matt Sykes' phone. So that's great because that gives us something to search off of. So let's pop back over to Variphy and let's go ahead and do some searching. I'm going to get rid of my is command here because this is only going to then pull up the CLI commands. Now, the phone change likely wasn't a CLI command, so we're going to get rid of that particular criteria right there. A couple different ways we could search. One, I can go ahead and put a keyword for IPC Matt Sykes, and that's going to bring up anything that is essentially associated to the keyword of IPC Matt Sykes. Other ways that I can search here is, let's get that one out of there, is I could actually just search the details similar to what I did before. And I could put IPC Matt Sykes, I could do equals, but again, I'm going to do contains because I'm essentially just looking at this details column here. So we want to see who made those particular changes. We can come in and we can see we have a device update. It was made by me last night around 4:26 p.m. And we could see that the MAC address ID was changed over here or has been modified. So again, great way to be able to kind of show the changes that are taking place, really move this application into the kind of our standard form of reporting. And away from kind of looking at the standard logs. This has been a huge improvement to both the speed that the results are being returned, especially when you're looking over larger data frames across multiple subs. But it's also just a huge advantage to be able to just quickly come in, do keyword searches, and even search for particular users. So, in this case, I have a user ID. I know that I have another friend of mine that's been making some changes in here, Mr. Jeff Young. So I can either do a equals or I can do a contains. In this case, I'm looking at strictly the user ID field. There's really no reason for me to do a contains unless I was going to do something like, let's just look for anybody that's got Jeff in their name. And we can come in here and see all the changes that Jeff has been making. This is going to give us the ability to, one, help keep an eye on what our employees are doing. A lot of times we have people that are starting that are getting kicked off, and it's important for a manager to come in and say, okay, let me make sure that they're doing things that I expect them to be doing. They're not going to places that I don't expect them to be going. And you can come in here, run a report on that particular user ID, and generate all those reports. Now, I don't have available yet, but we will be getting out, and that's the ability to then export these results. You'll see a few extra columns in here because we just kind of kept our normal format. This is not out yet, but that's going to give you the ability to then export all this information out into a CSV or a PDF file to then give you kind of a running record that you can export and keep somewhere or email off to yourself. So this is, I'd love to say this because this is really just a precursor of things to come. We recognize there are a ton of people using change management. We are absolutely planning to bring the change management feature into our other applications like WebEx, Teams, and Zoom, so people can run those same types of reports that they're used to from Call Manager into their new cloud-based platforms. This is really just a stepping stone to allow us to do that, allow us to get this information into the database as we continue to progress our application and move the rest of our application over into a more database-centric platform, but also being able to look towards bringing this type of information into our cloud platform and moving it away from on-site. So Jim, I think with that, that's for the most part I have to show for this sneak peek, essentially hitting kind of how to set up the configuration once you do upgrade to our December version, but also how to go ahead and generate and run some of those general reports.